Ben Kessler, CEO. Josh, great to see you again. Welcome.
Mr. Kessler.
Josh Sutton, Chief Innovation Officer of 66 Degrees. So great to have you. Could you introduce yourself and give a little bit of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Sutton, Chief Innovation Officer, founder of a company called Pandera Systems. It's a data and AI business that I actually merged into 66 Degrees under your leadership. So thank you for that. My role at 66 is a couple things. I think about one, how do I create technology that scales AI inside the enterprise safely, securely, and with ethics and generalized policy. The second part of my job is thinking about what is the human to agentic dynamic, and how does the psychology of people, and how do I actually execute transformative functions inside of a business that cause this new workforce to emerge in a measurable manner. Thanks for having me.
Josh, it's so great to have you. Josh, we've talked before about how we're serving our clients and how we're helping them become agentic enterprises. What I want to focus today's conversation on is how we're transforming 66 Degrees. And as CEO, I think a lot about how we're building a new consultancy. And I know you and I have worked on a steering committee in our business about how we're transforming the business. Could you tell me a little bit about what the new consultancy looks like?
Yeah, I think the new consultancy is simple. I think we've got amazing talent with specific skill sets that are highly valuable in the world. And what we're thinking about doing is how do I actually create a compounding effect of those passions and skills of our employees? How do I extend that with even more capabilities that we can provide in terms of value-based services to our customers? AI is an intimate piece of that equation. And so it's involved in the way that they think, it's involved in the way that they deliver, it's involved in the way that they research, and it's involved in the way that they engineer. And so the consulting of the future is really an AI-infused business where it's tied into just about every facet of the company. And I think we think of it in a couple of stages, Ben, in our steering committee. It's kind of infused, and we want to be a very dominant AI delivery and organization. And if we can, it comes by teaching and educating and supporting with tools and methods and approaches and frameworks. And so our business is really about teaching our people how to be the best possible version of themselves they can in the age of AI with AI, so that we can actually provide the most valuable services, rethinking the businesses and operations of our customers.
Yeah, Josh, I have to say, as being part of this steering committee and working closely with you over the past couple of years, is what I really frankly love is that it's helping our people become the best versions of themselves. I think I read a lot about AI right now, and we help our customers a lot with AI, and there's lots of noise in the market about, hey, what is this going to do to jobs, and what is this going to do to people? I think the positioning you have here, and the positioning 66 Degrees has, is how can this help our people? Not about, hey, how do we do the same amount with less, and how do we reduce our footprint, but more, how do we enable our people? Is that the right understanding?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the paradox that we talk about often is that less should do more, and I think it's the wrong way to think about it. I think the innovation is going to come from our teams. I think the thought leadership with how we redefine work is not going to come from some sort of publication or a book. It's actually going to be coming from people that have support, reinforcement, reward, and recognition for how to actually rethink the fundamentals of their job. And we allow them to do that with AI. I think they're going to teach us. And so our philosophy is to create an environment where people can learn rapidly, apply those skills, and evolve their job and their role and responsibility. And be rewarded for it. And I think at 66, I think that's our philosophy. That allows us to compete with the largest institutions and the largest consultancies in the world with how we deliver, how we think, and the speed by which we do it, and the quality and the result for our customer, and with a huge impact. And I think the investment is right. I think we're already seeing it with our teams, the way that they're actually functioning as teams, the way AI is helping them execute with distinction in a way that we've never seen before. And so I think trying to put that in a bottle is not a very easy thing to do. But the innovation velocity, in an environment where we're pro AI, pro team member, let's find the way to do this at scale and create impact. It's actually creating the pattern by which we will actually harness AI at scale for the new consultancy of the future. It's coming from the bottom up, 10 times faster than the top-down strategy.
Yeah, and I would say it's scary. It's moving fast, but it's an opportunity, in many ways a responsibility as well to our people. Let me double click into it a little bit, into our organization and how we're thinking about this and how we're beginning to redesign some of this. Could you talk to me a little bit about, let's start with delivery and how we're serving our clients. And so, I understand and we've really put a lot of emphasis on the individual, the engineer, the architect, the consultant. We've also introduced a paradigm, a platform of delivery agents. Can you tell me a little bit about how AI is changing how we deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're made up of a few practices that everything from, a data practice, we've got kind of an AI practice, we've got an engineering practice, we've got a generalized cloud architecture practice. What is common is, we use a proprietary agentic platform for delivery, and what it helps us do is strategize, plan, design, execute work on a different pace with teams and agents working together, kind of in a symbiotic relationship. And that's consistent across each of the practices. It allows us to tackle more complex jobs with consistency. It allows us to be more accurate with precision in terms of tackling the jobs in timeline. It allows us to pass an equitable value back to our customers in terms of getting the body of work done. So we're able to do that consistently at scale at the right price. And so I think that it's changing the way that the delivery is actually handled in a positive way.
No, and I can only assume that it allows you to, having spent a lot of time with CIOs and other C-suite customers, is they're always talking about business outcome. They're always saying, hey, I want you 66 Degrees to help me deliver a business. Does this new model help us achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. If we want to take a complex database estate or a multi-tenant architecture or a data center, for example, and we want to evaluate modernization of all the languages, all the applications, and all the infrastructure, we can actually land a team that can actually evaluate that in minutes and sometimes days, and using simulation, figure out what we want to do with it. And that simulation allows us to build in plans like ROI and efficiencies. And because we're so precise, if I can understand the fundamentals of that architecture and system on a scaled basis with AI and our teams, then we can actually engineer a game plan to change it to whatever the target architecture may be. And so that allows us to do it with such precision that I can focus on the outcome and the benefit, as opposed to just wrapped up in complex multi-year transformation that may not have an end in sight. And so where people might have steered away from risk, we're able to go into risk and eliminate the risk with it, having precision, and then tied and anchored into ROI. And I think that's really, a distinction in our business model and our capabilities with delivery.
Sounds like a huge win for customers.
100%.
So tell me a little bit about how going to market has changed and the go-to-market team has changed in the modern consultancy.
Yeah, I think, first of all, really effective salespeople. To be an effective salesperson, you've got to be a good listener. You have to understand. And so I think AI in our sales teams, there's a degree of, I would say, a great degree of comprehension, because we can listen in a way that's not been done before. We can hear every conversation, every question. We can think about the question in a different way, and AI helps us think through potentially all interactions with our customers on a scaled basis, and then provide tailored services to the specific need, missing nothing. And so attentiveness, I think, is to me incredibly valuable, so that every time our customers spend time with us or a prospect spends time with us, it's valuable. Nothing is lost, and there's no plowing old ground. And so very effective, very cohesive, highly personalized. I think downstream, we're effective in contract writing. And so our teams are using AI to write contracts relative to what we heard is necessary, needs to be built with precision. And so there's a lot of efficiencies instead of back and forth paperwork. It's kind of a thing of the past. It's compressed, it's efficient, it's not this laborious, complex, tedious contract processing. And so those are some really things that can be felt, as a relationship with us from our go-to-market team. But I also, when you think about what our teams are able to show and demonstrate in terms of like our capabilities as a company, we can show off how 66 executes, an AI transformation for us and our other customers in a single conversation with any seller at any point in time, in an elevator or in a hallway, because we have technology that's kind of tightly woven into our day-to-day.
Yeah, it gives a customer a great peek into a lens of saying, hey, you're going to help me transform. How are you transforming yourselves? An area near and dear to my heart. Prior to stepping into the CEO role, I was a chief operating officer and worked closely with finance and accounting, and then also HR and people. Could you tell me a little bit about the consultancy in the future and how AI and agents are impacting those areas?
Yeah, I think in HR, it's about talent match. And so us being a consultancy of the future, we've got AI in everything we do, which is essentially the modern worker will have that. And so we have jobs that are going to have AI infused, and we're going to have an environment that's supported. So our job requisitions are driven by AI, written by AI, based on this AI future that we're constructing at 66 for workers. And so it allows us to recruit in a different way. We're also using AI to perform some degree of interviews and responses, and I think our HR teams are incredibly efficient at quick turnaround times, because the worst thing that we could possibly do is have an interesting conversation with someone that really might want to work with us, and we might want to work with them.
And a week goes by.
Time goes by. We're able to actually shrink that time so that it's actually respectful on both sides, so we can figure out if it's a great fit. So we think we've got an environment that promotes AI first in our business, but we're also using AI to make sure that we can match the right way. So from an HR, that's just a simple example. On operations, it's complex. So I think it ripples through just about every part of our operations. So everything from demand planning to impacts of financial planning that may affect our staffing. So by having AI kind of fit inside of our tooling from an operations perspective, we can understand how to best build our organization structure for capacity from an operations lens using things like AI for forecasting. And so AI for forecasting connects to human resources and demand planning and resource planning, so that ultimately when customers want to do business with us quickly to solve a particular problem, each of these business units are interlocked, and AI is kind of the glue. And it allows us to provide the most effective services in the most effective manner with resources that really want to work in a futurism-based organization.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me is, looking at some of our highest AI users, it's oftentimes some people in the finance department at this point, and people that are reviewing contracts, or people that it's leveraging, an agent, and over time a digital peer to actually extend the capabilities. It's quite impressive when we look at our internal statistics.
Ben, you told a story the last time we sat down. It was about a year ago, and you told a story about the accountant, when the spreadsheet was invented, that everybody assumed that the accountant would go away.
Yep.
And so what we have today is lots of spreadsheets. The same amount of accountants.
Yep.
I think when you get into finance and operations, there's a high degree of efficiency when those teams start to think about analysis and FP&A at scale, financial planning, and how it affects the core operations of my business. That cycle actually moves faster. And so they're actually one of the fastest growing users, the office of the CFO and the office of the COO, to really run an effective business that's healthy. From demand planning all the way through fulfillment. In our core business, for example, it's allowing us to be frictionless, very insightful, incredibly fast. And the byproduct is good cost for our customers, great opportunities for our employees, and happy customers with big impacts.
Yeah, it allows us to make better decisions.
Absolutely.
Actually. Josh, let's stay in the finance realm if we can, and not necessarily how we're using AI, but I think AI has transformed our business. And so, on one hand, I read a lot of news that say, hey, what will AI do to employees? What is the future of employees? And hey, maybe there's an opportunity for cost synergies and savings. On the other hand, I hear, hey, people are spending a lot on AI, on tokens, and I've read an article the other day is that people are hitting the ceilings on their spend at this point, and actually spending significantly more than they would have thought. How should we and how are we looking at the cost of AI? If we think about where we are today and then where we'll be at over the next couple of years as we're building the consultancy of the future.
Yeah, I don't think we have to look at it any differently than the way I would look at an hourly rate or a salary on a line item on the P&L. So tokens are one-to-one with that relative value unit. Agents are like one-to-one with headcount potentially on the P&L. And so I don't think we have to think about it that much different. what we have to make sure is that this concept of token, input, output, how it's used relative to a job function, am I getting the value for that cost? We call this tokenomics. It's the theory of the relative value unit to the purpose and intent of someone actually putting the query through to get the value for it, and how does that compare to time as it would be in some other manner.
Sure.
So the thesis is that when you bundle it in a way that I can actually look at that relative value unit and sense that I can actually perform the same function that used to take me a lot longer, a lot faster, than my relative value unit is significant for the company, so it's effective. But I have to be able to measure that. And so if I can't measure it, then I can't financially engineer, how do I actually, go be more, competitive in the marketplace, and how do I reallocate capital to grow the business? And so we got to get down into the basis of it fits on the P&L, you measure it on the P&L, and when you get down into what's called competency cost relative to token usage, it means, is it an effective use of cost for someone's job function? Then we can actually start financially engineering the business. So we really talk to the C-suite often about teaching the constructs, the measurement system, how to actually drive change with it, of tokenomics as a result of deploying AI at scale, so that I don't hit a token cost that's high, and I'm not getting a relative value unit or an outcome that's actually beneficial to my business. And so what I find often is that most organizations are they want adoption, for AI, but they actually can't measure is it effective use of the cost. And so if you get tokenomics right, the measurement system up front, then what you can actually do is it a good cost basis for me to actually keep deploying at this level, or do I need to educate differently? Or do I need to build agents? If I can't educate to close that gap, then that's really a good place where an agent can actually create a repetitive task or feature function. And so it's got to start with the measurement. Tokenomics is our approach to it. Start in the very beginning, and you can actually measure your way and financially engineer your business with AI.
Yeah, and I'd imagine you have to set a baseline so that hey, here's where my cost to my business is today. And then you can chart over time is to say, hey, am I actually seeing efficiencies in this, or am I not? I'm actually seeing a cost increase.
That's right. Ben, I mean, coming from a CFO's lens, I think in your past, I think you wouldn't have your salary line an unlimited amount to try to grow the top line revenue. Right? The token cost is also very similar. Agents also very similar to headcount. It's got to be valuable. It's got to be measurable. I have to understand how it's being used. Is it an effective use? And I think once we do that, we create an interlock between the CEO's mission to create an AI-based workforce, the CIO's mission of create technology scaffolding to facilitate that, and the CFO saying, I'm actually getting a material output that's allowing us to redeploy capital in an efficient manner to go be competitive in the marketplace.
That's an intersection of all three of those perspectives, which makes a great outcome. Josh, the last thing I'd love to talk about is something that I've always admired in you is your love for people, and particularly your love for your people in the business. Something that I know we've both thought a lot about is how AI impacts our consultants and AI impacts our employees. Can you talk a little bit about the employee's perspective as we're putting more and introducing more AI into the business?
Yeah, I think it creates the greatest opportunity in our workforce's time. I think as an employee, we're predispositioned to think that I've got a role and a job and a function, and maybe I don't have a particular skill set yet, or maybe I haven't learned a language, and so maybe I'm an engineer and I don't know R, but I know Python. And I think we carry this stigma of what I know and what my certification is. What I'm finding is that when you bring AI and it becomes part of ingrained in your day-to-day workforce, that kind of starts to go out the window. We can actually accomplish more. And when the collective can accomplish more together, then we can provide great services for our customers, because I'm not stuck by having a certain amount of people in a skilled resource or technology. We're actually all very critical thinkers that can apply change and create impact for our customers. Doesn't matter the language, doesn't matter the platform, because we can actually do it. And I think AI creates the proxy for skill set expansion, and the ability to deliver value in a way that maybe old roles and responsibility and old learning just didn't afford. So here at 66, I think roles and responsibilities and jobs and practices somewhat define kind of an organizational structure. But when you get down into it, you're finding that a lot of our team members can deliver on so many different levels of value, whether it's strategy or design or architecture or infrastructure, to coding in multi-languages, to solving complex problems, to building agentic systems. A person can do all of those individual things. And so the consultancy of the future is a group of people that are passionate about doing that. And I think that's what we provide at 66.
Yeah, what I love, Josh, and you and I talked about this a year ago, is, do we believe that we've hit the ceiling of human capabilities? Do we believe that and do we think that, because if the answer is yes, well, gosh, AI is scary, actually. But if we believe that AI can help us remove some of the ceiling or some of the artificial ceiling, we can retrain ourselves and learn a new capability and actually multiply our capabilities, which is what you're talking about, is to say, hey, I as a human am actually greater because of this. And I may have known Java, but with AI I can actually learn a different language and make myself more valuable, is what I'm hearing you say.
I'm an expert in all languages. In fact, languages that I know or don't know don't really matter, right? I understand value and I understand a complete value. It's exactly right. I think it's scary when we think about it that AI may need to put human in the loop. You heard the HITL, which is an acronym is used often. I think the way we think about it is human in the lead. And I think that the more we can do with AI as a team member to provide great services and value to our customer, and we're actually leading AI, we're the orchestrator. And so the analogy I would give is the music that we produce isn't the garage band, it isn't the cover band, it isn't the rock band in front of the stage. It's actually the orchestra, and our employees should be the maestro, right? Conducting the symphony across a wider range of sounds and value. And I think that's what technology will become. Our employees will become the maestro, right? The orchestra leader, producing a great symphony of value for our customers.
So if you had one piece of advice for one of our employees or for each of our employees in order to become the maestro, what would that piece of advice be?
I don't know if there's one, but I would say curiosity. Keep it. I think be curious, be hungry. I think the answer isn't no, or you shouldn't, or maybe it's not my job. I think learning, I think perpetual learning is a state that will win. And I think be curious and open to learn and apply and try in an environment like at 66, where it's open and we want you to learn the way and teach the pattern and grow innovation from the ground up and show us what the consultancy of the future could be. I think that's kind of lots of words for the one answer.
Awesome. Josh, great to be with you.
Ben.
Thank you.